Hello, everybody. What's going on? Welcome into another episode of HBCU Huddle. I am CJ Hurt. Follow me on the Instagram at new_ConRadicalness. Joined alongside, as always, by Mike Wallace. Follow him on Twitter. My Mike check. Mike is out in LA. Mike, what's it like out there, baby?
Oh man, it's un-LA like right now. It's overcast, it's cold, it's like 50 degrees. It feels a lot like Memphis right now in terms of weather, man. So, it's hopefully it clears up a little bit later, but it's always good to be here. Looking forward to another great show, man, and can't wait to get going on these topics.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll touch on a bit of everything today. The hiring season in the HBCU ranks is officially closed, with Lane College deciding to go ahead and hire Stanley Connors. So we'll talk some about that. We will also give because the Super Bowl was this weekend, we'll give our 6 favorite Super Bowl halftime, or not halftime, just Super Bowl performances of all time. But first, Mike, let's start with this year's Super Bowl in general and work our way to the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime performance, because that's fresh on everybody's mind. What did you think about the halftime performance, Mike?
It took me like in real time. I was kind of probably just like everyone else, unless you were just a diehard Kendrick Lamar fan. You were kind of looking at it and kind of guiding your way through it, or sort of being patient with it and making sure you understood and didn't miss anything that went over your head. All of those kind of things. So in my, like, Kendrick Lamar isn't in my era of hip hop. He's after that. So I don't listen to him every day. He's not in my playlist from that standpoint, unless there's something that he's doing in a dramatic way or whatever. But I thought overall, when I watched it the second time and a day or two later, it resonated far more with me in terms of how much I enjoyed it and how great the choreography was, and how everything was put together perfectly. The symbolism, his talent, the way he sort of orchestrated his performance. I mean, it was a masterful job, and I appreciated it a lot more after I sat back and looked at it and thought about it. But in real time, I guess I gave it like a 7 out of 10. But after I looked at it a couple more times and really understood what he was doing and how it all came together, it was a phenomenal show. I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Super Bowl halftime show, man. By halftime of the Super Bowl, I don't want to speak for anybody else, Mike. I am either drunk off of alcohol or drunk off of the food that I've eaten, right? Like I'm in a food coma, or I'm buzzed, or I got like a sugar high that I'm either on the way up or on the way down from, because I just consume so much. So to your point about watching it the first time, yeah, you're kind of paying attention to other things the first time that it comes on. Now, I will say that people around me, it was me, Kyra came through, Mike, because she wanted to gloat about the Eagles being champions. She knew they were going to win. She knew they were going to dominate. She is a Philly fan to the fullest, so she came through. My wife was there. A buddy of mine, his wife, and their 3 kids were there, right? So during the game, everybody's up doing things. Conversations are flowing. Commercial break, I make everybody be quiet, Mike. Don't talk during the damn commercials. I want to see what this is so I know if it's funny or not. And then halftime show, everybody stopped moving. Everybody was quiet and focused in on that. It's just different watching it in the course of the Super Bowl, because you're thinking about everything else that's going on with the game, be it the actual game itself, the commercials, what are we running low on, any drinks, chips, food, that type of thing. So you're not able to really soak it in that moment. So I think a lot of people went back afterwards and watched it a day later or 2 days later, and they had the exact same reaction that you had, Mike. Did anybody stand out to you? Were you pleased with any of the cameos, like over the top pleased, like, oh my gosh, there's Samuel L. Jackson, or there's Serena Williams? Oh, I wasn't expecting to see them.
You hit the nail on the head, CJ. Those were the two. Because I have to admit, man, I had to ask my son, my older son, who is that? And he was like, oh, that's SZA. I was like, oh, okay, that's who it is. All right, now I see who she is now. Okay, but immediately, because Samuel L. Jackson came off the top, we saw Samuel before we saw Kendrick in turn, and I was like, wow, what is Samuel L. Jackson doing? And I gotta be honest, man, I was slow. I'm like you. My mind was in a million different areas, and I'm like, why is Samuel L. Jackson dressed like that? And I was like, oh, Uncle Sam. Okay, then I saw the way that the dancers were lined up, and I was like, oh, okay, this is the American flag. I get it. There's some kind of statement that he's making about America and where it stands today, politically, socially, and all of those kind of things. And then, it's hard though. I will say this though: the Serena Williams one did catch me off guard. I kind of lit up when I saw her, and I was like, wow, man, she looks amazing, right? Because sometimes Serena, she goes through her just like we all do. She goes through her physical issues where, she looks kind of, heavier and then lighter, and then but she looked phenomenal when she was up there, when they showed her in that situation. And everything was beautiful. And the one thing that I struggle with though, and I'm sure rappers struggle with, is when you're trying to entertain and it's spoken word, and you have mixed metaphors and all of that in your in sort of your cadence. It's hard to follow along. I could not understand maybe 50% of the words that Kendrick was speaking because I don't know all the lyrics of his songs. So I was a little bit behind when it came to that. But then, obviously everyone knew whether he was going to get to "They Not Like Us," and when he hinted at it the first time, faked it, and then went to another song, and then came back to it at the very end, I thought that was a show-stopping moment right there. But yeah, it was just the political ramifications of it. I think people look too far deep into it. There are some meanings there, but I also think that the artist's creativity rose above the ranks when it comes to that. I don't know, man. You're a lot closer to Kendrick's wheelhouse than I am. I don't know how dedicated you are listening to him. What did you make of the performance? Did you think it was too political? Did you think it was too socially conscious, or did you
Listen, man, it's his performance. Do with it what you will, right? Like I'm not the one to dictate what you should be doing in your performance. I just ask that is entertaining. Please, like there have been halftime shows before where it wasn't entertaining for this reason or that reason. Not entertaining enough for my liking. And while Kendrick was very much trying to send a message during the performance, it was still entertaining to me, right? You had Samuel L. Jackson there, the personification of Uncle Sam, when he steps onto the field, and it is, hey, what's Samuel L. Jackson doing here? And he says, hi, you know me, I'm your uncle. Sam is like, oh, okay, here we go. Here it is. I thought that the choice of colors of the dancers as well, if we're going to start trying to dig into the weeds of the messaging behind the performance, I thought it was interesting, as everybody did, right? You can go on YouTube right now or Google not Google, you can Google it, hop on social media, type in Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show breakdown, and everybody's got thoughts on it, and most of them have the same thought as it pertains to this, the red, white, and blue. Obviously, it comes together and make the American flag, but when they hop out of that car, Mike, I'm thinking two things. One, holy hell, how many people are going to jump out of this thing? And two, like, oh, this feels like a nod to like gang culture in a way, right? Red being blood, blue being Crip. Like that was immediately where my mind went, and then white, maybe people who are no longer with us, people falling in gang violence, people arrested, that type of thing. And I thought that in performing the way that he performed, that comes through a bit, and then all of them coming together to make the American flag. We're like, yo, this is the America that I know, and this culture over here, Compton culture, because that's what it felt like. It felt very much like what Usher did in Vegas when he was like, hey, I took everybody to the A, what Dre did with his Super Bowl performance, bringing everybody over to LA to hang out for a moment. It felt like Kendrick was having, hey, this is Compton right here, and having all of those people merge together to make the American flag is, hey, Compton is America, American culture is Compton culture, and is black culture as well by extension. I thought that was interesting as well, but again, I'm just there to be entertained. I thought he did a great job entertaining it, metaphors and messaging aside, right? The whole Super Bowl, Mike, felt outside of what was going on in the lines. The pregame of the Super Bowl felt very propaganda-ish. You had, whether you agreed with it or not saying that it's right, wrong, bad, indifferent. It just is what it is. You had the tribute to New Orleans. It's in New Orleans. New Orleans suffered that terrible act of terrorism right at the turn of the year, right around the college football semifinal game. So that's like January. Was that January 1st? It was January 1st, where that man drove through a crowd of people on Bourbon Street. So they had that moment, Of course, you get the America the Beautiful and the national anthem and those types of things as well. So if we're doing that at the beginning of the Super Bowl, and then the Super Bowl is littered with commercials where that sort of messaging is going on, political messaging is going on. Hell, if Kendrick wants to make a political statement at halftime, fine. I only ask that you be entertaining, and he was entertaining. Hell, for crying out loud, the president was there. Donald Trump was sitting there. So, yeah, it was everything else can be politicized. Everything else is made political around this game. If Kendrick wanted to take his Super Bowl halftime set and make a political statement, I'm A-okay with it. He did that. He did a great job of doing that while also not sacrificing the entertainment. One of the things I took away, Mike, the way that he breathed, right? The way that he controlled a very, very large stage, and the way that he worked the crowd, both the crowd in attendance and the crowd at home, and the way that he didn't gasp for breath. There was none of the none of that type of thing. His breathing control was really, really good. And as a great MC, if you ever want to be a great MC, you have to be able to do that. I thought it was a pretty solid performance, Mike.
He had command. He had command of the stage. He had command of the stadium, and he had command of the audience of millions upon millions that watched. And we all were captivated, right? No matter what side you're on in terms of where you fall in the Kendrick thing, like you walked away from that. You walked away from that engaged. You walked away from that. It was thought provoking, and it did have some entertainment value. But I agree. Like overall, I was dissatisfied with my Super Bowl experience because number one, the game was a dud, and then number two, you have all of these, as you mentioned. Like it's too much messaging. It's too much. It's too It really is too commercialized at this point. I think when Kendrick Lamar is an artist and when he's doing his thing, you got to understand there's going to be some things you catch. There's going to be some things you miss. There's going to be some things you circle back to, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. But I don't need to feel that way every single commercial break, right?
Come on,
like
man.
every single commercial is coming across like it's a mixed message there. You see things and then you're wondering, what are they actually trying to sell me here? Like I see all the cinematography and the theatrics and the drama, but what is like, I don't need to sit here and have to think every single time a commercial comes on and what you're trying to do there. I'm with you. I think that's going to football sells itself. Football is the greatest sport on the planet when it comes to the influence that it has globally. Soccer is up there too, obviously, but football in terms of commercialization and the money and everything that goes into it, the game itself does what it needs to do. It brings everyone together to sit down and watch this spectacle that we have. But then when you start preaching to people, when you start trying to, you talked about it, propaganda and all of these other things, and that's just not the format, man. And I wonder if I'm alone in this, or maybe other people may feel like
that's something.
And then I felt like I'm being messaged to too much, and I'm just going to take a break. When the game is not played, I'm gonna walk away from the TV, and then I'll come back when I hear the next play go.
Well, I couldn't walk away from the TV, Mike. I needed to see that Doritos commercial, man. I needed to see the Dunkin' commercial. Like I hear what you're saying, and I agree wholeheartedly with you. And I've had conversations with others about how like unnecessarily preachy this game can get. And by this game, I mean the Super Bowl. Like, listen, man, I just want to sit down and watch football, drink a little bit, eat a whole lot, consume all of the deliciousness that I can, and enjoy what's going on the screen. Everything doesn't need to be made into a moment of or an act of like protest about whatever it is. That's just, I think we agree with one another. That's where we are. Let's move on, Mike, and talk about because that's this week's Pick Six. Top 6 Super Bowl performances of all time. Mike, what you got?
You're going to throw me on the spot.
Do you want me to go first?
No, man. I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Because I want you to go first, Mike, because we have some similarities. Okay. And like I don't want you to feel like, oh, CJ took mine and said the thing that I wanted to say about it.
No. I'll go. Number 6, I'm going to go in inverse order. So 6, Janet Jackson, the boob. That's all I got to say. But the thing is, it was Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. So it was one of those things where you had two iconic performers doing an incredible show, and then obviously the controversy at the end when the snatch and the boob dropped, and everybody was like, "Wow!" And then it cut to black or cut the commercial right away.
Immediately. A buddy of mine, we were TiVoing things. Mike, you remember the TiVo days? Kyra don't know
Yes.
nothing about TiVoing.
Yeah.
And the reason Kyra doesn't know about TiVoing is because after this moment, like somebody said, you know what? We need an app or a site or something where we can just capture these types of moments and just keep them up. And like Janet Jackson in the nip slip is how we end up indirectly with YouTube, right? They see that and like, we got to get this, and YouTube, it gets in the works. And they'll tell you, it was after Super Bowl 38 when they were like, yo, we got to get this. Like, that was an iconic moment. I remember my buddy coming to school the next day, like, hey, yo, I got it on TiVo. Did you see anything? He's like, oh, yeah, when you slow it down, you saw everything. It's like, what? Get out of here.
You could pause TV at that point, right? That was when that became a thing where you can, scream, capture, and record and pause from that point. So, that was an iconic moment that we'll always remember. For me, number 5, going after that, Dr. Dre Presents, man, when you talk about how he was able to bring together his entire culture of the people who basically was his tree. We hear about it in sports, the Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells tree, the Greg Popovich coaching tree. Where Dr. Dre had a hip hop coaching tree where he brought everybody into the fold right there, from 50 Cent to Mary J. Blige, to Eminem, to, Kendrick was on there. I mean, it was just a phenomenal show. And I'm a Dr. Dre guy, man. I'm a Dr. Dre historian. I really, really get motivated by his story. He's had some ups and a lot of downs, but the way that he got to become the icon that he's become is fascinating to me in a lot of different ways. So that show was fantastic. It was phenomenal, and it was in my era. So that's why I knew every song. I could understand every word, and it all just made sense to me from that standpoint. Number 4, Usher. Last year, it was highly anticipated when you knew it was going to be Usher. And I remember we did a show, CJ. We talked about, okay, what are his must-do songs when he has to perform, right, in this Super Bowl? And I think for a guy that had such lofty expectations and everybody knew Usher going in, could he still deliver? And he absolutely delivered for a fantastic performance in that halftime show. So he gets my tops. He's number 4.
That Super Bowl, Mike, that performance was so good that my wife was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go see Usher." Like that's why we end up in Atlanta to see the Usher concert. Yeah,
mine too. And she did it twice. She saw the residency in Vegas before the Super Bowl, and she said, "All right, he's gonna be performing at the Super Bowl, and then I got to go see again just to make sure I saw what I thought I saw the first time." So she definitely got in on that one, man. When it comes to that, number 3. It wasn't a halftime performance, but it was a national anthem, America Beautiful, national anthem. Whitney Houston, man, in that the Persian Gulf War era, I believe it was 92 from that standpoint. I was, college, high school, going to college, and just, the patriotism, the singing, the voice, the fly over at just the right time when she was hitting her longest note. It was just a remarkable moment. And Whitney Houston, I think it was one of the highlights of her career when it came to that. Now, it wasn't a halftime performance, but it was certainly a Super Bowl performance of the year.
That's what we gauge all national anthems off of, right? Like Whitney Houston's national anthem is the national anthem people think of when they think of national anthem, and then we judge everything accordingly based off of that. That's how good it was. That's a good one, Mike.
Oh, no question about it. Number 2 for me, this was one that, my older kids, Bruno Mars, man, like they were all over him from his first album, and they knew, my older daughters just absolutely love Bruno Mars, and they were like, "Dad, you're gonna love this guy. He's got this older school soul like you like, and I was like, who is Bruno Mars? And then he was on the Super Bowl, and I was like, oh, this is Bruno Mars.
Yeah.
This guy he's a perfect blend to me, and you can never really, it's hard to compare guys. But he has a little bit of Prince in him. He has a little bit of Michael Jackson in him in terms of his dancing. He has a little bit of Stevie Wonder in him in terms of his harmony and how talented he is as a musician. He just brings a lot of these iconic, I'm not saying he's them, and he will never be on that level, although he's really, really good for his own era. But Bruno Mars in that Super Bowl performance was fantastic, man. And, it opened my eyes to who he was and who he became from that standpoint. And I'm still a Bruno Mars fan to this day, no matter what, from that standpoint. And for me, number 1, I don't even have to look down in my notes. I just remember this. I was in Miami. I was at that Super Bowl. I remember.
You were there?
I was at that Super Bowl. I lived like 7 miles from the stadium, so you could see the stadium once from my backyard, just because of the way Miami's laid out. A lot of flatlands, and you saw everything. I saw the press conferences before that when Prince he didn't even hold the press conference. Somebody asked him a question, and then he just cued the stage, and the band just showed up, and he never answered any questions. And then what put it over the top, man, was Purple Rain in the rain.
In
It
the
actually
rain.
was raining at halftime, and he was out there with an electric guitar, a headscarf wrap.
Couldn't mess that dude up, baby.
And he was going through Purple Rain, and that's the most memorable Super Bowl scene that I've ever seen in my life, either in person or on television. Prince, man, number one in my book, all the way across the board.
Couple of people that we know were in stadium for it. Rob Fisher tells the story because he was at the press conference. He's like, "Oh, it's Prince's press conference. Sit down. I'm and he talks about the reaction. If ever you get to pull Rob to the side, and you got to ask him one thing, only one thing. Say, hey, Rob, tell me about that Prince presser. He can go on about it. It was incredible. And Brett Norsworthy over at Sports 56, he was supposed to leave. 56 sends people down there to the Super Bowl every year. And then, they don't get to go to the game. Like, they're credentialed for the game. They can go for the first quarter. But then after that, you're usually trying to rush, get to the airport, hop on your flight to make it back because you got a show to do on Monday. Brett was like, you know what? I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay through halftime, and then I'm going to go. He said it's the best thing he's ever done is stay through the halftime of that because that's how iconic it was. I like your list, Mike. That's a very, very good list. We've got a couple of similarities on our list. Let's start with my list, though. Over at number 6, Michael Jackson. The reason we have the Super Bowl halftime show, I think everybody is aware of this now. Super Bowl used to just have marching bands come on and do something. In Living Color, the Wayans brothers, Damon Wayans, was like, hey, you know what? Let's do a Living Color episode. We'll start right at halftime. And they pulled such a large number of people away from the Super Bowl who just didn't come back. They flipped it over and just didn't come back. And so then at the next year, the Super Bowl said, hey, you know what? We got to do an actual show to keep other people from trying to do this so it doesn't happen again. And I do believe that was the Michael Jackson year. Michael Jackson hops out on stage, all glittery and gold, hair blowing in the wind, and just stands there hitting that pose, and the crowd goes crazy. It's incredible. I loved it. Number 6, Michael Jackson. Speaking of incredible, number 5, Diana Ross. Not too long after that Super Bowl 27, we get Super Bowl 30, and Diana Ross was incredible. We hadn't had a moment to talk about everything in the pregame show, Mike. Southern's band, the Human Jukebox, just like take the caps off for them. Just good job. Great job. It was incredible watching them. They were phenomenal all Super Bowl long this past Super Bowl. And they were on the field for Super Bowl 30 with Diana Ross also. She is changing wardrobes. She is having the crowd spell love. Balloons, for some reason, get involved as they just get released into the sky. You've got the people on the field. At some point, a choir walks out for some reason. I don't know why, but they're there. You've got people on the field making cool designs on the field as well. She throws on a cape, Mike, and then she just stands in front of the fan and lets during I Will Survive, lets the cape blow in the wind. And then, Mike, she has the audacity to just leave in a helicopter. Helicopter comes down. She gets into the helicopter. She waves bye to everybody, and the helicopter takes off. She's like, yeah, I'm done here. I'm Diana Ross. What you expect? Incredible Super Bowl performance. I like Super Bowls where stuff is happening. I just need things to be happening. I don't need a lot of messaging. I prefer no messaging, but fine if you're going to message it. As long as you have stuff happening, I'm your guy. And there was stuff going on in this Super Bowl, Mike. Number 4, you had him at number 2. I have him at number 4. Bruno Mars. It was great. He is such a talented performer. And the thing that really does it for me is when the Red Hot Chili Peppers comes out. Nobody was expecting Red Hot Chili Peppers to be there. And Bruno Mars just seamlessly transitions into the Red Hot Chili Peppers portion of the show. It was incredible. So much energy. They're shirtless. It's in, was it MetLife? It was in one. It was in one of the New York stadiums, and it is February in New York. It is cold, and out pops Red Hot Chili Peppers, like they're kicking it on the beach in shorts, in Vans, and shirtless, and they're just rocking the hell out. And I loved it. Stuff, Mike Wallace. Stuff was going on in that Super Bowl. Number 3 for me, Mike, is Beyonce. Her Super Bowl performance was outstanding, and I remember how excited I was. Like, oh, Beyonce's not bringing anybody out. Beyonce is just going to be Beyonce. And I think this was before Kelly and Michelle came out. Beyonce's dancing as like the background dancers are also Beyonce, right? Like there's a screen up behind her of various Beyoncés dancing along with her, and it's like, okay, that's about right. She's a star. Of course she's not gonna bring anybody out. And then up pops Michelle and Kelly. And I was like, oh, Beyonce didn't have to do that to me. It was good stuff, man. Great choreography. She's a tremendous performer in her own right. And the songs, I knew those songs, and so I could bop about to them and nod my head. But she did Baby Boy. I was like, ooh, please bring Sean Paul out. If you had to brought Sean Paul out, I'd move her to 2, but she didn't, so she's at 3. Number 2, Mike, speaking of stuff happening, Katy Damn Perry.
Okay.
From the start, Mike, Katy Perry hops out on a giant mechanical tiger. I do believe, right? I don't know if it's mechanical, if somebody's moving it underneath, whatever it was. She's out on this larger than life tiger. Then she lands and she starts performing. It's like, okay, cool. I bop with some of this bubblegum pop. Like, okay, yeah, go ahead, Katy. What the hell is that left shark doing? Why does the left shark not know the dance moves, Katy? Can you explain that to me? Left shark is throwing me off. It's confusing me a little bit. It was so bright, so vibrant, and you had the left shark moment. And then she brought out Missy Elliott. She brought out Missy Elliott, and she leads on the like reading Rainbow star, like the More You Know star. Remember, she hops up on that platform, Baby You're a Firework, one of the great closers in Super Bowl halftime show history. Baby You're a Firework, as she shoots across like a shooting star away and out of the stadium. Oh, such stuff, Mike Wallace. Again, stuff is happening. That's all I need. And number 1, for all the reasons you laid out, Mike, like it's Prince. It's Prince. The thought of, hey, they're not going to be able to do a Super Bowl show. Prince is not one of these acts who's going to phone it in because of the rain. They're just not going to have one. To, oh, they're having one. To, ooh, I hope it doesn't rain. To, oh my gosh, it's raining, get him off stage. To, I know this man is not doing Purple Rain in the rain with the head wrap. With the head wrap, rocking out to Purple Rain. I know he's not. Prince, number 1, man. It was good stuff. It was real good, Mike.
He turned the Super Bowl into a jam session.
Yes.
And it was just one of those things where, first of all, I was concerned about safety. Like, it's electrical instruments in the rain outside, right? And I had a chance a few years ago, to go to Paisley Park after he passed, and saw his home and his museum, his studio, all in one place. Like, he lived in this phenomenal, place where he could do all the creative things that he wanted to do. He had a diner in there, like a real like Waffle House diner inside his house, right? It was set up just like a diner. And the music studio was not too far away, his offices, and you just saw the kind of person. You got a glimpse of who Prince was and why he was the way he was, based on how he lived his life, man. And that was just an iconic Super Bowl performance. And we went different ways in how we ordered it. I don't know why, but I totally forgot Michael Jackson did the Super Bowl. When you mentioned it, I totally remember that from that standpoint. But to have your 6 is Michael and your 1 is Prince, you bookended it with 2 legendary acts, man. And it's been some phenomenal Super Bowl performances along the years.
They say, Mike, legend has it, somebody affiliates, one of the producers, directors of the Super Bowl halftime show, came up to Prince. I was like, hey, before you go out there, is there anything you need? And he said Prince was facing away from him. And said, Prince looked over his shoulder, Mike, said, yeah, make it rain harder. And it just went out on stage. Like, are you kidding me? This man is a maniac. Shout out to Prince, man. I love it. I love it. Let's transition real quick, Mike, before we get out of here. The HBCU head coaching search season is officially over. Everybody's got hires now, with Lane College going out there and hiring Stanley Connor. So that officially closes the hiring season amongst HBCUs. Now we can all start looking forward to, we got to be coming up on spring season, right? Spring football is right around the corner if it hadn't started already for some schools. And just for your knowledge, for your own personal use, listener, viewer, here are the new HBCU head coaches and the schools they're coaching at. We got Sam Shade at Alabama A&M, Deshaun Jackson, Delaware State, Adrian Jones, Elizabeth City State, Michael Jones, Florida Memorial, Kenny Ray is the interim coach at Fort Valley State. Like I said, Stanley Connor at Lane. Miles College has got Chris Good. Terrell Buckley is at Mississippi Valley State. Sean Gibbs, we talked about that a lot when it happened, over at North Carolina A&T. Norfolk State, speaking of talked a lot about it, Mike, when it happened. Norfolk State got Mike Vick. And Prairie View A&M, Tremaine Jackson over from Valdosta State, where he had a really, really successful D2 tenure over there. And then Shaw University went out there and got Lamar Manigo. Mike, who do you think of those new coaches is best positioned to be successful year one? We saw Chennis Berry do it, right?
Yeah.
Like we saw him be remarkably successful, MEAC champion, and got to the Celebration Bowl, was ranked for a portion of time during the college football season last year. Which one of these coaches could be on the Coach Berry train come October, November?
You know, that's a phenomenal list right there. You're talking about almost a dozen coaching hires and coaching changes when you look at what's gone on across the HBCU landscape. And something tells me, you know, the Valdosta State experience and winning at the high level in Division II is going to transition really, really well when you talk about Prairie View. That team has already been in contention for SWAC Western Conference title runs and division title runs from that standpoint. So if he can help put Prairie View over the top, I think that's the coaching job and that's the coaching transition that I think will have the most year one impact, because he doesn't have much more to do. He's not bringing Prairie View from the bottom and trying to take them to the top. He's just trying to put them over the hump. And I think that's going to be the one that I think will be the breakthrough.
You're in Texas also, and not just from a high school recruiting standpoint, but also from a portal recruiting standpoint. The portal is set to open up one more time, Mike. It's going to open one more time in April, and so there'll be guys there'll be guys from Texas on other programs, FBS programs, and some FCS programs as well, who will look around and say, hey, you know what, this is no longer where I want to be. Let me try and find a landing spot. I want to get closer to home. And being in Texas helps, just like being in Florida helps Florida A&M with that. Where, all right, you go to Florida International or go to Appalachian State, but just know if it doesn't work there, you can always transfer back here. I feel like you can say the same thing at Prairie View A&M if you're Coach Jackson. Hey, go to San Diego State, go to Utah State, Colorado, go where you got to go. Just know if it doesn't work there, you can always come back. I think that's a good pick on your part. I look forward to seeing what all of these coaches do, Mike. I'm really, really intrigued by all of them. Of course, the big names, Mike Vick and Deshaun Jackson. I think that those two could do some interesting things up there in the MEAC. Before we get out of here for the day, Mike, A Different World, one of the great black TV shows of all time, A Different World, is on the Netflix. And it got us to thinking, Mike, and we'll do this next week. What are your favorite black TV couples, right? Because Dwayne and Whitley are up there, aren't they?
They definitely are. And it's because they were influential at a time when I was transitioning. And I was in high school during the heights of that show. And then, you know, it influenced me to go to a HBCU. And then when you saw how they looked, and then you get to your HBCU and you start dating and seeing how things are, it all fit. It all made sense. It kind of trained you for what it was going to be like to go to a HBCU, man. And from the studies all the way to, you know, the love life and those kind of things, man. So yeah, that was definitely an iconic relationship right there that played out over seasons. And I'm looking forward to the Pick Six next week for sure.
Kyra's going to do one for us, Mike, also. So we're going to get Kyra's.
She's gonna have Disney characters and all these other weird things, man. And she's gonna go Kendrick Lamar on me. I'm gonna have to take 3 days to understand and go back and study who these couples are. You know that's gonna happen.
Probably it's Kyra.
We love you, Kyra.
Mike loves you, Kyra. That'll do it for this episode of HBCU Huddle. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. same time, same place, right here in the Built Ford Tough studio on Grind City Media. For Kyra, who Mike loves very, very much, and Mike himself out there in LA, I'm CJ. Everybody take care.